Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So this thing here is the name of the function. This is the return type, and here I'm going to write the arguments of this function. Okay. I'm sorry. So these things are written when you define the function. I'm going to define this function here. So I'm defining this add function here. Its return type is integer, and it is going to accept two integer types of arguments, which I'm going to name as int x and int y, right? And let's just write the body of this function. So now you should note that these int x and int y, these two variables, these are local to this function. So you can use these two variables only inside this function. So this function, it's going to simply return your x plus y. That's it. I'm done. And here what you can do is, I need to call this function. So we can do it in two ways. So one way of doing it is we can create a new variable c here, and we can collect the value of this add. And what else? So I haven't still collected the value of a and b from my command line, right? So let's collect the values of a and b first, because we want to add a and b. How can we do that? Where will the value of a be stored? From our last lecture, what is the value of a going to be? Perfect, right? So it's going to be stored as the first argument. First argument means zeroth argument is going to be the program name. First argument is going to be a, and second argument b. So let's just collect its value with a to I function to convert it into an integer, and we can have an argval of 1 here. Similarly, we can have the value of b here, right? And then I can do a c equals to add a comma b, right? And then I can go and I can do a printf %d \n for a new line character, and see here, right? So I'm done. Let's just execute it. Right? So here you see the value 5, which is the sum of both of these numbers. Okay. One thing you can also do here is, instead of creating this new variable c and using it, you can just remove it from here, and you can directly have add a comma b here. You can also do it in this way. It will work perfectly fine. Okay. Okay, this was a simple function. Let's come to the concept of pointers now. What are pointers? Anyone? So the concept of pointers generally boggles our mind, but once you understand what exactly are pointers, you will be very comfortable with it. So see, here we have, is someone speaking something? Okay. So here we, yes, yes.
Ma'am, for the logic of any question, the logic is always written while defining the function.
Can you please come again?
Ma'am, like for a particular problem, I have a logic. So, ma'am, the logic is written in int main part or while defining the function only?
See, that's totally up to you. That's totally up to you. So why do we use functions? Actually, I can write my entire code in my main. Anyhow, it's main which gets executed, right? Then main calls different functions which are doing something. So you can have your entire code in the main itself. You can implement all your logics inside the main. But why we don't prefer to do that is because it makes the code very complicated to understand. For example, see here. So I have a logic here implemented, and what this logic is doing, this logic is just checking whether your arguments are correct or not. So if I want to make my main function smaller, which is easier for the user to understand, what I can do is I can pass this entire thing to a function and just call the function here. So let me just do that and show to you. So functions are generally called to organize your code better. So see, what I can do here is, instead of doing it like this, I can create a function whose name is sanity check. So this sanity check function, what it is doing, it's just checking whether my arguments are correct or not. And I just pass the value of argnum to this function sanity check. And I can move this entire code inside a new function here.
Abby, tra.
So just look at this. What we have done is, I have passed my entire logic inside a function, and since argnum is a number, I am just going to have a value here, let's say x. So here I need to replace this argnum with x, right? This function is now returning -1. Otherwise this function will return 1. So if things are correct, it returns 1, otherwise it returns -1. Now what can you do here directly? If this value of this function, when you call it with argnum, if this value turns out to be -1, you can simply return from your main. So what I have done here, I have reduced the size of my main program with the help of a function. So we write function to modularize our codes. Let me just check once whether it's working properly or not. Perfect. So it still works fine. Okay. Is the doubt clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, we were moving to pointers. I'm not going into the details of pointers as of now. I'm just going to tell you what pointers are. I'll not do a whole lot of coding using pointers in this session. We can keep it for some other session where pointers will be needed. So later on, you are going to look at data structures like linked list, etc., where you will be using pointers a whole lot. Here today, since you said that you are uncomfortable with pointers, I'm going to give you a very small idea of what pointers are. So till now we are using simple variables, which are of type integers A, B, and C. So what are pointers? Pointers are your special kind of variables which hold the addresses of these. So see what will happen when you declare 3 variables here, A, B, and C. So these variables are allocated, sir, some memory in your system. Only then you can use them. They exist on your memory. So here what you are doing is, I am actually giving out some memory to these, and every memory has an address. So all these 3 integers, they are located at some address in the memory. So you can visualize memory as a chunk of blocks, or you can say as some homes, and each of these variables, it is residing inside a home. So A has its own home in the memory, B has its own home in the memory, C has its own home in the memory, and every home has an address. So what I want to do, let's say I want to look at their address. So where exactly is A inside my system? What is its address? So for that we use pointer variables. So pointer variables, you declare them like this, int star. So int star shows that whatever variable you are now creating is going to point to the address of something. And let's say I have a x here. So now x is a pointer variable. And where it is going to point to, it can point to the address of integer type of variable. So it cannot currently point to the character type of variable. Since it's int star, it can only hold the address of your integer type of variables. Okay. So how do I give some value to x? Assume that here now I want to see the address of A. So since we are talking about pointers, let me just not use the remaining things. Okay, let it be here. So for now, let's just comment all these lines. Yeah. So now what I want is this X, it should hold the address of A. So if I write something like this, it will show me an error. Why? Because X is a pointer type of a variable. It can hold only the address of another variable, not the value of any variable. So I always do something like this. So this means address of A. So X is now a pointer variable which holds the address of A, and let's say I want to look at its value. I'm not really sure whether we use %d for this. I need to check this one out. Let me just try to do it. So I'm trying to print here the value of X. Okay. Let's see here now. Does someone has an idea how do I clear this entire screen in Windows? What is the shortcut for that?
Ma'am, it's CLS.
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 Thank you. Okay. Okay. So let me just execute this code. So you see this whole string here. As of now, it sounds to me as a garbage value, not a pointer type of a variable. Just a second. Okay, what if I write something like X equals to A here? Will it execute? Can one of you just do this and tell me what happens if you execute something like this? Can somebody just tell me? Okay, I have something here. Okay, so it shows a segmentation fault, right? So it shows you an error because I'm trying to allocate this pointer. So this pointer is supposed to hold the address of another variable, but I'm giving it the value of another variable, which is not a proper memory address. So it shows me segmentation fault. Okay. So for printing pointers, I think it is %p. So like you use %d for integers, we have %p for pointers. Let's just do this. Okay, I'm sorry. So it is destined to hold the address of A, right? Not the value of A. And okay, so here you see it's a valid memory address 0060FEF8. So this is your address where your variable A is stored. So please note that here your X, it holds the address of A. So if you want to see the address of B, address of C, you can do it like this only. Okay. Now there is one more thing with the pointer type of a variable. You can also see what is there at that address with the help of pointer. So assume that I give a value of 10 here. So one way to look at the value of A is simply I can print the value of A and it shows me what is A. Another way to do it is, since now we know that this X, it is holding the address of A, I might want to know at what is stored at this address, right? So for that, we can use a star operator, star X, I'm sorry. So please note that X holds the address of A, and if you look at just the value of X, it will show you the address of A. But if you look at the value of this star X, it will show you what is the value which is stored inside that address. Value stored at X, which is an address. Let's just, right. So you see here, so this first thing here, it is your value of X, which is the address of A. Your second thing here is the value of A, and your third thing here is the value which is stored at this particular address. Assume that now I change this and I make it address of B. Can you predict the output of this code? Any of you can just predict the output of this code? Okay. So first you will have an address of X. So you have missed that, Akshat. So first you'll have some address. You'll come to know the applications of pointers once we'll implement data structures like linked list and others. So you have new data structures like trees, linked list. So I cannot really tell you, when you use those data structures, you'll very well understand the application of pointers. I can tell it. Have you read structures in C? If you have read something like structures, you might be aware of their applications. And definitely, if you want to play around directly with the memory of your system, then you need pointers. And one reason why, you'll read this concept of pointers only in C and C++. In languages like Python and R, they don't allow you to create something like pointers, because pointers allow a user to directly intervene with your memory, so which might not be safe in certain cases. Okay, so it's going to be address, 10 and 5s. Okay. What do you think is this now? What is Y here? So what we have just done here, we know that A and B were simple integer type of variables. Then we made a pointer which holds the address of these variables. Now, since I have declared a pointer type of variable here X, so any variable which you create in your C program must be allocated a memory in your system. So definitely this X here is also having some memory in your system. Assume that now I want to see the address of X. So X was holding the address to A, right? That is the value which is stored inside X. If I was having a iPad or something, I could have actually created it and shown to you. I hope it is being clear. So see, it is something like A, it is there inside a house, and that house has some address. Now this X knows what is the address to that house, because I have stored, let's say, the address of A in X. So the value of X will be the address of A, but X itself will be housed somewhere in the memory. And what is the address of that house? So to know the address of that house, we have created a double pointer or a pointer to a pointer. So this is why here, again, it's a pointer type of variable, and it's going to point to a pointer because there is double pointer here. So now you can go ahead and actually what you can do, you can, if you want to see the address of X, you can just have it in Y. So Y here, it stores the address of X, and definitely you can see the value of Y here. Or let's say I want to see the address of X, and then I want to see the address of Y, right? For now, let me just comment this. So see, first you see the address of X and after that you see the address of Y. Now if you want to see the value of X, you can use a star Y here. If you want to see the value of A, right? So value of A is inside inside star X, or you can also find it inside double star of Y. I just wanted to give you a brief recap of pointers. Don't worry if you do not understand them properly even now. We'll take them in detail in some other session. We can also look at some competitive exam questions which deal with pointers. So my main aim of this lecture is to make you more comfortable with arrays and passing them in functions. So I'm now switching to array. I hope that the first sanity check which we did in the last lecture, you understood that. What I'm going to do now is, let's try to take an array as input from the user and let's then try to print it out. So we are just going to do this much. Take an input array from the user with command line arguments and just print its value. So in order to do that, we need an array. So this is how you declare an array in C. So it's an array which can hold 100 integers, and I have this n here. N here will hold the size of the array. So why we need to hold the size of the array here? I have already told here that this array is of size 100. Why again I am having this n here? So the reason is what we are currently dealing with, they are static arrays. So see what will happen when I declare this array 100. So there will be some memory which will be allocated inside my system, and this memory will correspond to 100 integers. So memory equivalent to 100 integers will be there in my system. So you cannot increase or decrease this memory later on. So whatever memory you want to give to an array, you have to predefine it. So assume that I know that the number of students in a class, I know that I might have 50 to 60 registrations in my class, but I'm not sure of the exact number. So I might want to keep a value 100 here because I know that it's not going to exceed 100, and that 60 will come here inside n, which will tell me the actual number of elements. So here what it means, when the user is giving command line arguments, I'm expecting that the user is not going to give more than 100 elements, right? And whatever elements user will pass, I'll have them in this n here. Okay. And again, the format of our input will be, so if the user is executing A, my first argument will be the number of elements in the array which he wants, followed by your individual element. So this is going to be the format. Yeah. Perfect. So I'm just going to move all this. Okay. What will be the sanity check condition here? We have done that in the previous lecture. Previous lab we have done that. So the sanity check is based on here both your argnum and argval, right? So as of now I'm going to incorporate your sanity check here itself. Otherwise it will require a function which have an array as an argument. I'll slowly show that to you. So when I should return here -1, what should be the condition? Your argnum. So the how many arguments should be there? It should be 2 plus the value in your value of 1. So this should be clear to you from our last lab's discussion. So argval1 tells you how many elements are there in the array, how many elements the user wants to give. So the total number of arguments should be those elements. So this argval1 is the number of elements plus 2. So this 2 here, one is for your program name and another one is for the size of the array, right? So if your argnum, it is not equal to this, so it returns a -1. And you can have a printf statement here saying that it's an invalid input. Perfect. Okay. Next, what we want to do is, if everything is all right, I want to take the inputs which user has given in the array. So how can we proceed? Okay, so we'll have a for loop here and iterator here. So for I equals to 0, the index of the array will start from 0 and it will go till I less than n, right? So from 0 to n minus 1 will be the indices of my array. Okay, there is one problem still. I don't know what is the value of n. Okay, why this is a 2 here? I have, okay, I'll quickly go through it. So see, what we want is when the user is giving input an array, so your output should be something like A. If I'm saying that there are 5 elements in the array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Then what this condition is checking your number of arguments. So what is the number of arguments here in this case? It is 7, right? So this argnum, this should be equal to what it should be equal to. What I'm saying here, I'm saying that there are 5 elements in the array. So this is your argval of 1, right? Plus 2. Bit of a mathematics here. So what I'm saying is whatever argument, howsoever you call this problem, assume that I have a and followed by an x here, then there should be x number of elements here, because I'm saying that my array has x elements, right? So I have those x elements here. So what is the total number of arguments? These x and plus these 2. So that's why here is a 2. So this 2 comes from these 2 arguments. One is your program name and here is your first argument which tells you the size. So again, I would ask you to think a bit about it. So if you understand clearly what exactly is this argnum and argval, you will get it easily. Okay. What we are going to do now is I want to take this input from the array. So what should be the condition here? What should be ARR of I? So where are my array elements starting here in this? So I have to take elements from this, what I have passed in this argval. So argval of 0 is my program name, argval of 1 is my number of elements in the array, right? So yes, we need to have a value of n also here. So what is n going to be? N is going to be this first argument over here. So I'm going to write it. N is your argval of 1, right? Okay. And where your array element starts from, it is starting from argval of 2, right? So argval of 2 is your 0th element of the array. Argval of 3 is your first element of the array. So what I'm going to do here is, it's going to be argval of I plus 2. So this number 2 is important here. And again, I need to convert it in an integer, right? And then I can have a for loop for just printing the value of this array here. Yeah. So this is a simple program to take an array as input and show its value. Let's say there are 5 elements, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. So it shows you all those 5 values here. Okay. Next, quickly we'll look at how do we pass this array to a function. So what we can do is, let's say instead of printing the array here, I want to create a function and that function should show you the value of this array. So this entire thing I need to pass it in a function. And I want to, let's say, replace it with just one line code where I call this function print array. Okay? That's it. So I want to pass my array here. There should be a function print. Let me just make it fprint. So there should be a function fprint which should do this code for me, which should print all these values. Right? So how can we write this function? So since this function is just printing, we can have its return type as void. That's it's not returning anything. And then I have a fprint function here. So there are many ways of taking arrays as an argument. The way I'm going to use it is going to be like this, right? So see what's happening here. This array A is now copied to this new array whose name will be A. So one thing I want you to note here. So in case we are passing array as an argument, right? So whatever changes you will make to this A here will be reflected back in your ARR, because the functionality of your array is based on memory address. But if it was a simple variable which was an integer, the changes won't be reflected back. Let me do something like this. Assume that I pass two things to this. One is ARR and one is N. Right, so first argument is an array and second argument is an integer. So let me rename it as X. So ARR is renamed here as A and N is renamed here as X. And then I'm going to just paste that code over here. Right? So I need to have I over here. So for I equals to 0, I is less than X, I plus plus, I'm going to print here %d A of I. So this is going to do my job. Okay. So you can see here it prints your entire array. Okay. Now one thing here, assume that here I accidentally change the value of A of 1 to be 1000. Right, and assume that I also accidentally change the value of this X here and make it 90. Right. So I'm changing the value of this first element of this array as 1000 and the value of X is 90. So the initial array was passed to this A and the value of N, which was the size of the array, was passed to this X over here. And let me just, after coming out of this function, let's look at both of these values. So the first value, the tab, and then a second value. So let's say your first value is going to be the first element of your array and second value is going to be N, both of which were passed to that function, and that function has modified the values of both of these. And let's just execute it. You see what just happened? So your first element of the array has been changed from 3 to 1000. However, the value of N remains the same. So that is the difference when you perform this call by value. I'm not going to call by pointers again. We'll do that sometime later. So here I'm doing a call by value. So when you do it for a simple variable, whatever changes you do inside this function here, they are not reflected for a simple variable. However, for an array, if you change things in here inside this, they will be reflected in your original array. Do you know the reason for that? The reason for that is your entire functionality of your array is based on this ARR here. And this ARR here is nothing but it is your address to the first element of the array. So whenever you are passing this array, what is happening is you are passing an address here. I'm not going into a lot of details here. So just keep in mind that an address is being passed here in the case of an array. So if you make some change to the array, it will be reflected in the original code. However, it won't be so for a simple variable. So I'll just comment it for now. Okay. Do you know how to insert in an array? So you need to tell me, are you people comfortable with the insertion in the array? And I should hear from each of you. Okay. Okay. So what happens to this array when I declare it over here, ARR 100? It creates an array in memory, and what are the initial values of all the elements there? So I'm definitely setting the values of n elements over here, which are given by the user. But this array is actually of 100 elements. So all your remaining values will be 0. Now assume that a new student comes to this class. This was a class which had some n students, and I was holding, let's say, their marks or roll numbers whatsoever. Now a new student comes into this class and I want to add his marks. So there are many things here. So one thing is you might want to insert a value at the end of an array. Another thing, you might want to insert an element at some point in middle in the array, right? So insertion at end is very easy. Can you tell me what do you need to do if you want to insert? Let's say I want you to just add a line here, and what this line should do, this line should insert, let's say 80 at the end of the array. So what should I do to insert 80 at the end of the array? It has to be at the end. So currently, where is the last element of this array? Okay, first tell me this. What if I want to see the first element of this array? What should I do? What is the first element of this array? People can choose to unmute yourself and speak out. Okay, so there seems to be a confusion here still. Okay. Okay. So please make this clear. So this entire thing we are doing here is you need not be confused by these command line arguments. The purpose of command line arguments here is just that user is giving you some input and you are making an array out of that input. After that, the function of this command line arguments is over. So instead of this command line arguments, I could also have a loop here with your scanf function, which will take some n inputs from the user. So here your array is built, right? I have read the values from this command line arguments. I have my array ready, and now I want to see the first element in this array. So you can access it in two ways, as two of you wrote. So definitely the first argument of this array is present at this location, argval of 2. No doubt in that, because your first argument was your program name, second argument was the number of elements in this array, and now this argval of 2 will tell you which is the third element in your command line, will tell you what is the first element in this array. So now forget about the command line arguments. Given to you an array ARR, if I want to look at its first element, it's going to be ARR of 0, because the indexing of an array starts with 0. So this tells me actually an element which is present exactly at your address ARR. If I want to look at the first element of the array, it's going to be ARR1. If I want to see the second element, it's going to be ARR2, so on and so forth. Okay. Where will be the last element of this array? So what should I write here to access the last element of this array? Perfect. So there are n elements in this array. So I can definitely have a n minus 1 here. So if there are 5 elements in the array, they are going to be array 0, array 1, array 2, array 3, and array 4. Perfect. Okay. Now I want to insert an element at the end of this array. What should I do? So we have seen where are all the elements stored in this array. I want to insert an 80 at the end of this array. What should I do? Okay. What will ARR of n minus 1 equals to 80 do? So please note that I have asked you to insert an element at the end. So what ARR of n minus 1 equals to 80 will do? ARR n minus 1 is your last element, right? It will be having some value in your array. So if you do something like ARR of n minus 1 equals to 80, it will change your last element to 80. I don't want to change your last element. I want to insert an element at the end. Okay, Priyanka, I don't want to remove anything. So let's say I have 5 students in the class, n is 5. So for n equals to 5, I have a of 0 as something, let's say marks of the first student, a of 1 is your marks of the second student, so on and so forth. And a of 4 is the marks of your last student, fifth student, right? Now I want to add the marks of one more student here. I have a sixth student and I want to add the marks here. So how do you add that? What is the logic for that addition? Okay, so there are two things associated with this array as of now. N tells you how many elements are there, right? N tells you how many elements are there in this array, and the value of those elements are stored from ARR 0, ARR 1 up to ARR of n minus 1. These are the values of those elements. Now I want to insert an element at the end. So definitely the size of your array will change now. Till now I was having n entries, right? So I was having 5 people. Now I want to add a 6 people. So definitely I need to change this n. So n should be now n plus 1, right? Because I'm adding a student now, n plus 1. Okay, now the value of n is changed from 5 to 6. Assuming that there were 5 students before, n becomes 6 now, assuming it was 5 before. And where should I now insert that new value? So previously I had values from ARR 0, ARR 1, ARR 2, ARR 3 and ARR 4, right? So now I want an entry at ARR 5. So you need to be cautious now. It should be ARR n or it should be ARR n minus 1. I have already changed n. Okay, are you sure it is ARR n? Okay, so there are two things. I can do it in two ways. So one is if I do not do this, if I'm not changing n as of now, right? So simply I have values from ARR 0 to ARR n minus 1, and definitely my last value is going to be in ARR n now. So I can insert this 89 into ARR n, and then I can increment n by 1 because I have one more element in my array. Or if you increment n first, then you should really place this new element at ARR n minus 1. So these are the two ways of doing the same thing. Please look at it and ensure that you understand these two lines. So these two lines are the same way of writing, are the different way of writing the same thing. So here I have first added to an index, after that I have incremented the number of elements. Here I have first incremented n and then I have are you sure time is up? This lab is of 2 hours, dear. Guys, so one thing I want to be clear, I don't want to sound rude, but when first assignment was given to you, it actually doesn't use anything of data structures. It uses knowledge of pure C and arrays, which were covered in your last semester. If you are really comfortable with arrays and C, so you can actually skip this lab and go and do that assignment. And if you are not comfortable with C, then you should spend your time with me here understanding it.
Ma'am, so it's fine if we leave right now.
It's fine if you understand arrays and all, it's fine if you leave. Perfectly
Okay.
fine. But later on, you should not complain that your C concepts are not clear.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah.
Huh?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, just wait for 2 minutes. After that, the people who want to leave can leave. Just give me 2 minutes.
Okay, ma'am. Sure.
Yes. So I'm here sharing a form with all of you. So I have as of now some 46 students in the class. So all of you, I'll close this form in 2 minutes. So you should quickly fill this form for your attendance, and after that, people who want to leave can leave. Regarding having the doubt on email, you can definitely ask me doubts on email, but that doesn't mean that you should not attend these sessions and always send me an email. So I'll just close this form in 2 minutes. I have 46 students, so I can have a maximum of 46 responses. Okay, any doubt till here? I really prefer you unmute yourself and speak.
Ma'am, can you explain the last part again?
Okay, so see, what I'm doing here is, assume that n is 5. So I'm just assuming it. Assume that n is 5. So what all will be my array elements? Array 0 will be my first element, array 1 will be my second element, and ARR 4 will be my last element. Now I want to insert one more entry here. So to insert one more entry here, what we are going to do is, so one way to do it is you first set the value of ARR n to be 89. So for example, if n is 5 here, so what this statement will do, it will set ARR of 5 to be 89, and then it will increment n, indicating that now you have 6 students in your array. What the second statement is doing, it will first increment your n. So it's first going to make this n to be 6, which means that now next there are going to be 6 elements in this array. And next what it will do, so it will set the value of ARR n minus 1 to be 89, which means that ARR 5 will be set to 89. So ARR 5 now is the index of your last element, since you have 6 elements in the array. Any doubt till now? Okay. So I'll just continue. How do you insert an element at a given location in this array? Assume that I want to insert an element at an index 2. What will I do?
Ma'am, we can do one thing. First, we can increase the size of the array, and then the position at which we want to fix our own element, we can shift the elements one position forward and forward, and then that place will be empty.
Perfect. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. Perfect. So in this case, we need to shift the elements. Are you people comfortable writing a code for that? So assume that I want to insert an element at the ith location. Can you write a code for that? What will I need to do? So I have some elements here. Let's say it's a minus 1, and then we have ai, then we have ai plus 1, so on and so forth. After a certain time, I'll be having an minus 1. So now I want to insert an element at the ith location here. So how will we go about it? So whatever is here, right, that will move one position forward. To make an empty place at this particular position, we'll place that element here and we'll increase the size of array by 1. How can we write code for this?
Ma'am, we can make a for loop, and in that we can say that a of I is now equal to a of I plus 1.
A of I equals to a of I plus 1.
Ma'am, and the loop goes on from i's value to till the size of the array.
Okay. So let's say I have a loop here. And in the loop, I'm going to set a of I equals to a of I plus 1, right? Is it shifting my elements forward or backward? You see what will happen? A of 0 will become a of 1, right? A of 1 will become a of 2, so on and so forth. So do I want to do this or do I want to do the reverse thing?
It will be reverse, ma'am.
Yeah. So what we can do is a of I plus 1 is a of I. So it will do your a of 1 becomes a of 0, a of 2 becomes a of 1, so on and so forth. So how can I write that loop here? So from where should this loop start? I want to insert at the ith location, right? Here I want to insert. So now what should happen? This I plus 1 should get the value of I plus 2 should get the value of I plus 1. So let me write it like this. So let me take a new variable here, j. For j equals to, what should be the starting condition?
I minus 1.
Okay, let's make it I minus 1. Okay, what should be the conditional statement here? Confused? Okay, let's think about it a bit. So what we want to do, so firstly your a of I plus 1 should be equal to a of I. Then similarly your a of I plus 2 should be equal to a of I plus 1. So on and so forth. What will be at the last? At the last your a of n should be equal to, actually your a of n plus 1 should be equal to a of n, right? So that is your what should happen at the end. So I want to simulate all this. So I want to go from all the way I to n. So we can actually run it for j equals to I. J is, let's say, there are many ways of writing this. You can also do a logic with I minus 1. J is less than or equals to n. J plus plus, right? And what should we do inside this loop? So since j is starting from I, so we can have here a of j plus 1 equals to a of j, right? So what will happen when you place j to be equal to I, your first statement will be A of I plus 1 is A of I. Then your A of I plus 2 is A of I plus 1, so on and so forth. Is this correct, or whether there is some problem with this?
Ma'am, it should be reverse. I mean, the loop, it should be J minus minus.
Why it should be J
and
minus minus?
because we are equating A of 1 equals 0, and then A of 2 will be equal to A of 0, and A of 3 will be equal to A of 0.
See, sure. See, what we want to do is A of 1 should be A of 0. A of 2 should be A of 1. So every time there is an increment, right? This becomes, this 1 is becoming 2 here. 0 is becoming 1 here. See what will happen. Okay. See what is happening here. How will this loop run? So initially J equals to I. Assume that I was 6, right? So whenever you are confused, just do a dry run of the program. Just try to see what will happen. Assume that I is 6. So initially, I don't have a paper and pen here. This makes this job tough. So let's say I was 6, and let's say I had 10 elements. So n was 10. So what this loop will do? Now I want to insert at the 6th location. So J will start from I. So initially, what is J? J is 6 equals to I. Check the condition, 6 is less than equals to 10. Perfect. So what it's going to do? A of J plus 1. What is J plus 1? J is 6. J plus 1 is 7. So it will do A of 7 equals to, what is J? J is 6. So A of 7 equals to A of 6. What next? J plus plus. So now J becomes 7. When J becomes 7, what will this statement do? A of 8 equals to A of 7. Next, J becomes 8. When J becomes 8, what will it do? A of 9 equals to A of 8. Next, J becomes 9. Still it will work. So A of 10 becomes equals to A of 9. Then J becomes equal to 10. Still this is going to work. It will do A of 11 equals to A of 10. Right? So this is how this loop is going to run. So there is one small problem, since we had 10 elements, right? So our last thing, it should stop here. A of 10 equals to A of 9, isn't it? So I can just have a less than statement here. So it will result in this thing. So my code is going to do this. So assuming that I is 6, n is 10. So this code will do this. First of all, it will set A of 7 to A of 6, A of 8 to A of 7, A of 9 to A of 8, and A of 10 to A of 9. Is it clear why we are having an increment here? So this increment tells me what happens to J after every iteration. Okay. Is there something wrong with this?
Ma'am, but all the elements become A of 6 then.
Yeah, right. That is the problem. So all the elements become A of 6. So that is a huge problem here. So because what it will do? So assume that I am writing from the 6th element. So I'm going to write my elements here. A of 6, A of 7, A of 8, A of 9, and so I was having 9 elements, right? Assume that this was 3, this was 4, this was 7, this was again 8 something. So what this loop is going to do, first it will set A of 7 to A of 6. So A of 7 becomes 3 now. Next, it does A of 8 equals to A of 7. So this also becomes 3, and it does A of 9 equals to A of 8. This becomes 3, and then it does A of 10 equals to A of 9. So that element also becomes 3. So what shall we do? So what is the problem here? We are overwriting the things here. So what we can do for that? How we can resolve it? So assume that again I'm writing some values here, 4, 5, 6, and 8, right? So see what is happening. As soon as a of 7 becomes a of 6, a of 7 is losing its original value. So now think about it, what you can do in your code to correct this.
Ma'am, we can introduce A of 10 and do the backward thing. A of 10 is 8, A of 9 is 6, A of...
Okay, that makes sense. Is there any other way? Is there any other way to do this?
Ma'am,
So actually you are right. So otherwise we'll need to store a lot of things. Okay, now I understand why you were saying that decrement there. So in that case, what should I do? So this is not working, right? So what I should do is, what you just suggested me, if we work in the reverse order, so what we are going to do is, first we are going to set a of 10 equals to a of 9, right? So we want to implement these statements in the reverse order. So when a of 10 is a of 9, that a of 10 is going to become 8, then next a of 9 becomes a of 8, so on and so forth. So in that case, there will be no overwriting. Perfect. So how do you rewrite this? So from where should I start? So we want to implement these same statements, but we want to do it in a reverse order. I can start from n plus 1, let's say, or actually n. So n is 10 here in this case, and I can go back till I plus 1, and then definitely I need a decrement here, and then what we can do here is a of j becomes equal to a of j minus 1. Is that perfect?
ma'am, you have to use greater than equal to, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So this also gets reversed here. Greater than equals to. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So can you guys now take some time and write a code to delete an element in an array? It works in the similar fashion. I don't think we'll have time to cover recursion today. Maybe we can take it up in the next lab. So by that time, we'll also study it in your theory lecture. So just try writing a code for deleting an element in an array. You all can try, and if there is some doubt, you can ask me. Meanwhile, if you are facing some particular coding problem with your first assignment, you can ask me. If you want to discuss any idea for your first assignment which you are trying to implement or something like that, you can discuss it with me. Anything else you want me to discuss in arrays?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, like the problem you gave for the assignment, like if there is anything like that, if I want a particular thing to be performed again and again, ma'am, like in the assignment, we have to keep on dividing into half and half and half and half. Ma'am, if you want to do something like that, how do we code that, ma'am?
Okay. So see, if you want to do something again and again, we can do it in two ways. So you can use either iteration or recursion. So You can do it with the help of iteration, right? Okay,
Ma-
let's see. So assume this array is here as an example. Let's take this very array which we are reading from the user, and let's say I want to split this array in two halves every time, right? So how will I do that? So assume that okay. So give me some initial idea. How were you trying to do this?
Ma'am, like, can you please tell that again? What did you ask?
Okay, so what are your first thoughts on this? Did you try doing it in some way so that I can pick it up from there?
Ma'am, actually, wasn't able to code that thing very perfectly, ma'am.
Okay, see, so one way is if you want to divide this array into half and half every time, so you know that in the first time you want to go from 0 to n by 2 to n, right?
Yes,
Okay. Now this n should be changing every time. What should happen next time? Next time it will be 0 until n by 2 you are again dividing it into half. So it goes to something like n by 4 and then n by 2. And the same thing happens with your other half. So the other half goes from n by 2 to your what? Uh, is it 3n by 2? 3n by 4. Okay. To n. So how can we do it? Let me just try. Let's take a number m. So this m is initially your n by 2, right? So you can have a loop here. Assume that now you want to process both these halves. So we'll see what we can do to this loop later. I'm just keeping it as an empty while loop now. So here what you can do is you can process from, let's say, a0 to a of m the way you want, and then you can process elements from again a to you can make it m minus 1 also. So I'm just giving you an idea, and then you can process from a of m to a of n minus 1. So I'm done doing it in two halves. Next, what I need to do, what if I make m to be equal to m by 2? So let's say n was some 100. So now m is your 50. Now I'm just trying to think aloud, trying to see how you can do it with iteration. So with recursion, it's pretty easy. Okay, so you process here element from A0 to A49. You process here the elements from your A50 to A99. Next, we set m to m by 2. So now m becomes 25, right? So now I would want to go from, so this, I would want to process here, and I would want to go from A0 to a of m by 2 and then a of m by 2 to this previous a of m minus 1. Just give me some time. Let me also think how you can do it with an iterative loop. Okay. Let's take the coin example itself. That will be easier to do. So assume that, okay, I'm taking your divide by half and divide by half case only. So this m is your n by 2, right? So assume that I was having 100 coins initially. So I want to compare first 50 with the later 50. So here actually this process means you weigh the coins from A0 to A of m minus 1, and here you weigh the coins from am to an minus 1. Right now one of these will be heavier. Now you see which one is heavier, and according to that you can change the indices here. So let me do it this way. Okay, see what I'm doing here is I'm trying to maintain some indices over here. So this indices tell me which half of my entire treasure I am checking. So initially I am checking the entire treasure. So let me keep my beginning to be 0 and let me keep my end to be n minus 1, right? And here I have n elements. And let me store that number also in n. So I have n elements here. So now what we can do is I can weigh here from a0 to a of n minus 1 by 2, and here I can come from a of n minus 1 by 2 something to a of n minus 1. So it allows me to weigh both of these. Now one of these will be heavier. Now based on which one of these is heavier, you can set your beginning and end in the same way. So assume your this part is heavier, right? So you know what you want to check next. Next you want to check only from a0 to a of n minus 1. So you can get give here a condition. If your first half is heavier, then what you can do is you set your beginning remains 0, right? And what does your end become? Your end become end by 2, right? Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you can also change your num to be num by 2. And actually you might want this num, and you can also work without it. Depends on how you are implementing this. So I can actually also set this num to be num by 2. Here I can have this, num instead of n here. Perfect. Okay. Uh, if your second half is heavier, if your second half is heavier, how will you change the things? Then this beginning becomes equal to n by 2 or n by 2 plus 1, whatever you want it. Means it goes to the beginning goes to the next half of the array. Your end remains the same, which was your n, or let's say num here, and again your num becomes num by 2, right? So based on which half is heavier, these variables change like this. You can have in this while condition a statement which checks how many elements are here between your beginning and end, and as soon as these elements become 2, you can come out of this while loop. Okay, assume that your first half was heavier. What will happen in the next iteration? You are going to weigh from a0 to, now your num has become num by 2. So see how it is working. So assume that this, we said that this num was 100 initially. So here I have checked from A0 to A50 and A51 to A99. Now what happens here? If your first half was heavier, beginning remains 0, end becomes end by 2, which means now end becomes 50 and num becomes 25. So if your first half is heavier, in the next iteration, your beginning remains 0, your end becomes end by 2, which is now your 50, and your num becomes num by 2, which becomes 25, right? So now you are going to weigh from, are you getting an intuition what I'm trying to do? I'm also
Yes,
trying
ma'am.
to think aloud with you.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so because of that while loop, it will go again and again to the half and half value as per which side is heavier.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting you to do is at every time you just keep a track of what is beginning and what is end. So in this entire array, assume that these are all your coins, which I show by dashes. So what I'm trying to do in this loop, I'm trying to keep a track of this beginning and this end, right? So assume that initially my beginning and end is this. Then I split it into two inside your loop. And after splitting, I got to know which one is lighter. Assume that second one was lighter. So in what I'll do in the loop, I'll set my beginning to be here. Right, so beginning will come all the way from here and end will remain here. So now I'm checking this particular part, which is the second half. So now my new beginning is this and my new end is this. And again I split it into two halves and compare. Now assume that here the second half is lighter. So what I'll do, I'll get my end all the way from here to here. Now I'm checking in this part, beginning is here, end is here, and you keep going in the same way. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is how you can do it with iteration. Since we haven't discussed recursion, if you want to do it recursively, then you can keep changing the values of this beginning and end in a recursive loop. In a recursive function. So for your function of the balance scale, for the balance scale function, you are free to use anything as arguments, any type and any number of arguments. So don't remain restricted by something which is written in the document for that particular part. You are free to use anything as arguments to your balance scale function. Okay, any more doubts? We have some 20-30 minutes more. If you have any doubt related to the assignment or some particular part, some function, some return statement, you can discuss it here.
Ma'am, in the assignment, the first algorithm in which we have to do pairwise comparison, ma'am, I thought in a way like if I do like a of 2i, a of 2i is equal to 2i plus 1. I try to do in this fashion such that I get 0, 1, then 2, 3, like this. Ma'am, it every time says that the 2i subscript is not an integer. Ma'am, what does that mean?
You should write 2 into I, basically 2 star I think.
Okay, ma'am.
See, this thing won't work in C. If I say something like, let's say A equals to 2. So this is how we generally write it on a paper. If you do it in C, it will give you an error. This 2A is nothing. So you need to write it like this.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes, Priyanka, you'll have to have all these inside your while loop only. If you want to visualize it, you know what this while loop is doing. If this is your whole treasure, so your while loop is just checking that you are doing some processing on this array, and it will stop till you have just 2 elements to compare. What it will keep doing till then, it will keep dividing your array in half based on which one is lighter. Then it will divide that particular thing in half. Assume that this one comes next, then this into half here, then this into half here, and it keeps doing this till you just get 2 elements over here. Yes, for this code, it is mandatory to use a balance function. This is because the statement of the puzzle is like that. You are allowed only to have a scale, which is your balance scale, which looks at both sides and tell you which side is heavier. See, otherwise, if you are just working in C and you want to see which is the lighter coin, you can actually take a scan around the array and figure out which is the element which is lighter than the other. So in context of this puzzle, it is mandatory to use a balance function. What you need to do is, you don't need multiple for and if statements. So see what your balance is doing. So inside this, I'll just tell you what is happening inside this while loop. Inside this while loop, so first of all, this loop will keep running till you have some coins in your treasure. And what you are going to do inside this loop, you feed I have a beginning and an end here, which is here beginning is 0, end is n minus 1. I'll just remove this part here. Okay, I'm just trying to tell you what will happen in this while loop. You keep coins from a of 0 to, let's say, a of n minus 1 by 2 on the left half of your scale. How will you keep them on the left half of your scale? We will see this. And then you keep coins from, actually let me write this way, a of beginning to a of beginning plus end by 2, right? So you keep these coins on the left half of your scale. Then you keep the coins from a plus, there might be plus or minus 1 difference in what I'm writing here, a of beginning plus end by 2 to a of end. You can keep it on the right half of the scale. So what do I mean by keeping it right half of the scale is, I'm going to call your balance scale function here. You need to pass both of these halves to this balance scale function. Pass both the above halves here. That you need to decide in what way you want to pass both of these halves to the balance scale function. You can actually construct 2 separate arrays from this, which corresponds to the first half, and this one which corresponds to the second half. And you can pass both of these arrays to the balance scale function. Or what you can do, you can just pass these indices to the balance scale function and have the remaining functionality in the balance scale function, which checks which half is heavier. So this balance scale function now tells you which of the halves is heavier, right? Once it tells you which of the half is heavier, based on the output of the balance function, based on the output of above function, you change the values of your beginning and end. So if your first half was lighter, what you can do? If your first half was lighter, you can simply set your end to be end by 2. And if your second half was lighter, then you can set your beginning to end by 2. I think it sums it up. The code is all the more further refined when we thought about it a bit more. So see, what will happen? Initially beginning was 0, end was n minus 1. This balance scale function here checked both the halves here, beginning to beginning plus end by 2 and beginning plus end by 2 to end. And let's say it said that the first half is lighter. So what will happen in the next iteration? Now end became end by 2. Basically your beginning is beginning, which is 0, and if n was 100, then end became your 50. Now what will happen? It will keep the coins from beginning to end is now 50, right? So it will come from 0 to 25 on the left half, and it will go from 25 to 50 on the right half, and again your balance scale will compare both of these halves, and accordingly it will again change the value of your end or beginning, and you keep going in this loop. I think this is how your base code for your while loop, or if you are using a for loop, will look like. Any doubt here? So this you need to think about, how do you pass both of these above halves here? Sure, you try this one. Okay, anything else related to this assignment? I won't say there is a particular platform to practice such questions. What you can do is online, you can look up such websites like Hackathon, etc. So they have some coding contests. So when you will go for your job applications, or even for, let's say, higher studies, you will be given such real world programs to code. If you want more examples of such problems, you can check you can just type online C contest, and there you will find a number of such problems which you can practice. How to become more proficient at them is only through practice. So you keep coding and it will make things more clear. Okay, any other doubts? So I'll try to, I'll take recursion in the next class. For this particular problem, I suggest you can also look at the code for something called binary search. It will help you. Sort of similar. Just look up at the iterative way of doing a binary search. Okay, students, any more doubts? Otherwise, we'll close off this session. So I'm here, I'm waiting for till 5:20 here. And if no doubts are there, I'll close the session. Shall I close the session, all of you? I think there are 7 students left. So if all of you agree that I can close the session, I'll close it. Okay, still 5 of you here.